Today. Are you tired of living with stained and worn-out carpeting? Does the den look like bears spent the winter with you? Spring is here, and so is Empire Today's half off your project sale, starting now, but only for a limited time. Save 50% on a huge selection of carpet, hardwood, and laminate, standard padding and materials, and basic installation. Call the Empire Today half off your project sale hotline now.
1-855-385-0681.
Empire Today's free in-home estimates are easy and smart. Choose from high-quality flooring in the rooms where you'll use them, with your lighting, so you can see the color best. We'll do the measuring, you do the selecting and saving. But first, you must do the calling. Everyone loves the half off your project sale. Even bears. Call the Empire Today special hotline
1-855-385-0681. 1-855-385-0681.
Empire Today. Select styles. Details at EmpireToday.com.
Mysteries abound around the world, from strange lights in the night sky to ghostly apparitions passing from one realm to the next. From the great pyramids of Egypt to what lies beneath the depths of Loch Ness. From Bigfoot to Atlantis, they are all mysteries waiting to be solved. Join Laurie Phillips, Lauren Smith, Graz, and Billy Simmons as they search for the truth on Nite Callers Radio. Good evening and welcome to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. You're here with your hosts, Billy Simmons, Laurie Phillips, Graz, and Lauren Smith. It's April 16th, 2015. On this day in history, the hallucinogenic side effects of LSD were discovered by a scientist who accidentally consumed the synthetic drug and experienced the unusual sensations and hallucinations. Disclaimer, the manufacture, sale, and possession or use of LSD was made illegal in the U.S. in 1965. How are you guys doing tonight?
Well, if you're talking about LSD and stuff, I'm not sure.
You probably have the most experience with it, so,
yeah.
You know.
I'm about to have a flashback just thinking about it, I tell you.
Yeah. Wow. I'm doing good. I must have done something well last week. Actually, got top billing tonight on the introductions, so woohoo!
Well, you know, we feel sorry for you sometimes, and
don't forget us poor people.
Yeah, you lick those windows, Billy. We still love you.
Good deal.
How are y'all doing, though?
Doing pretty well. Overhead.
I think you're breaking up a little bit. Is he breaking up to anybody else, or is that just me? Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I said.
Okay.
Big storms overhead.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We're finally going to have a clear weekend up here. I might actually be able to get out. I've got all my stuff up against the wall. I'm going to charge everything up and Have it ready. Just disappeared for a day or two.
Nice.
About time.
Yeah.
Yes, I know you're ready to do that, Graz. I know you're ready to do that deal. You know, it's almost the same thing. It's almost raining every weekend here. And we'll have one nice day, and then the rest of the week is rain, rain, rain.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not complaining. There are a lot of people out there that are in drought right now, and so I would love to send them some of this. I would be glad to send them some of this.
Yeah.
That's kind of an interesting. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's not going to be too much longer. It's going to stop down here in Texas for us, so I'm trying to enjoy it.
Till next spring.
Yeah.
Well, you remember me telling you, and I think I played it. I had some audio that I played, and it was the weird sounds that I was hearing. Lauren, you remember when you came down for Easter last year? We were hearing those strange noises out in the forest. Well, they're back. They're back. Same strange noise. And
did you get any on audio?
No, because it's exactly like before. I guess I should, for confirmation. But everyone that's been hearing it just, they don't know what it is. So almost sounds like I have a band of apes out in the woods, gorillas or something. It's real strange. But it only did it, as far as I know, it only seemed to do it the week I was on vacation. Now I'm back at work now, so it could be doing it during the day, and I wouldn't know unless I guess I should put out a recorder.
Yeah, while you're not there, especially, because it was during the day last time, too.
They might come up tapping on your windows while you're not home.
I might breathe on the microphone or something cool like that, right?
Yeah, because when I heard it, it was really weird, but it was just off enough to where you think it might be a dog, like a really big, weird dog with a cough or something. It was really, really weird, but it was, like I said, it was close enough to where you're like, well, maybe it's a dog, like a dog with, asthma or something. So I don't know. I
don't know either. It's a mystery. Complete mystery.
Well, definitely get that recorder set up, and hopefully you can have something to play for us next week. That would be awesome.
Well, the only deal about all of that is it's going to rain every single day this week, so it's kind of pointless. All I will get most likely is rain.
Tap around, they might still come up and play during the rain. They don't care about rain.
Yeah.
No, they definitely don't. No, that's true. They don't.
You never know. It might clear up. You might get something, but just wait for a clear day. Well, we are all really, really excited to have Mr. Jim Whitehead from my home state of Oklahoma on the show tonight. I'm probably more excited than anybody. So everyone out there, you feel free to join in the chat discussion and ask any questions that you might have for Jim or the host. Also, just to let everyone know, if you're unable to listen to the whole show and have to leave, you can go to Stitcher.com and download the app and listen to Nite Callers on the go. We also upload our shows to YouTube every week, so you can also catch them there. You can find the links to those on our Facebook. So get your drinks and snacks and everything and get settled in, because it's going to be a great night. Graz, tell us about our awesome guest.
Oops, I was looking at something. I'm sorry. You caught me off guard. Hold on.
I also wanted to let everyone know that if you want to call in and talk to our guests, call in. Our call-in number, it is 347-989-0313. If Blog Talk starts giving you a hard time, call in 347-989-0313, and you can call to listen in. If you want to talk to the guest, press 1. So,
Okay. Graz, you done reading about LSD? You ready to tell us about our guest?
Waka, 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 waka. Tick, 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 tick. Continuing. The North American Sasquatch Researcher Series, Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio, is honored to present Oklahoma Bigfoot field researcher Jim Whitehead. Jim Whitehead grew up in the shadow of a local legend that roamed the creeks of central Oklahoma. Having some strange encounters as a boy and knowing people who had seen the creature left him open to the possibility of the creature's existence. As a boy, his father taught him how to track and live off the land. Jim went on to study biology and did some volunteer work with the Oklahoma Biological Survey and Oklahoma Academy of Science, and eventually earned degrees in natural science and biology. After encountering the creature in 2006, Jim began to research the creature in question. Eventually, he joined MABRC and became the Western Oklahoma State Director and a scientific advisor to the group. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Graz. Jim, are you with us? I'm wondering if he's off mute. The 405.
No, he's still on mute. There you go.
It should be now. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Is that you, Jim?
Yeah, it's me.
Hi, Jim. Welcome to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. I'm Laurie, and we didn't get a chance to introduce you to everybody. I'm Laurie. The other female here is Lauren. Also, there is Bill and Graz. And so welcome to our show.
Thank y'all. I kind of apologize. I was running behind on the way back.
Oh, that's all right. You're here now.
Yes. We would have been terribly disappointed if you didn't make it, because I grew up in Oklahoma, and my daughter still lives there. So we're excited to have an Oklahoma Bigfoot field researcher on tonight. So welcome. Jim, I'm going to start out questioning. I'll be the what is wrong with me tonight? It's just brain. It's distracted me. Okay. I'll be doing the interview at the beginning, Jim, and I wanted to start by asking you, how did you begin becoming interested in Bigfoot?
Well, I was always kind of curious about it because we had a local legend out where I grew up, and see, it was kind of unusual because they drilled it into us as a kid locally. You know, you don't go out on the creek at night. If you do have to go out at night, bring a gun, go in groups. And, you know, sightings have been going on in this region going back until the late 1800s, to be honest, as I would come to find out.
Mm-hmm.
But, there had always been sightings of what they called the creature of Criner Creek. And this, you know, I knew people that said they had seen it. My brother had seen it. My dad had seen it. My mom may or may not have seen it. I'm pretty sure my uncle had. So it wasn't people that I just barely knew that had ran into this thing. And over the years, I had a lot of weird encounters growing up in the bottom, and really left everybody with, you know, a lack of a good explanation. And when I went to college, I kind of delegated it all to folklore. You know, just, yeah, they said they saw something, they probably didn't. You know, and about 2006, I got proved that not only was the creature very real, it was pretty much living in my own backyard, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I had a series of encounters one night. I would get home about 3 in the morning, and I'd go out to feed the dogs, and the dogs were extremely frightened, you know. I had 2 German Shepherds and a pit bull, and something was moving around down there, and it was pea soup fog, and I could not see what it was, but this happened repeatedly, and then finally, one night, it crossed the creek when I was down there, and I found a 15-inch barefoot track the next morning in the mud. And about a month after that, I saw my first one as an adult.
Wow.
So.
Can you tell us about that? Was that
there wasn't much to say about that one. I was just simply driving out, and there's a spot called Mushroom Gully down there, and that area has had about 70 sightings. And as I was driving through Mushroom Gully, I looked off to the side and saw something take off. It was some distance away, but it was moving upright and dropped down to all fours. When it entered the tree line, it was running across the pasture, and it covered a good 500-600 yards before it hit the tree line. That's far longer than any bear could go on 2 legs.
We're talking about central Oklahoma. Can you be more specific about the area, like what counties you're talking about, or?
I primarily research in McLean, Cleveland, and Grady County.
Yeah,
and
there's
Garvin
been a lot
County.
of sightings there.
Yeah. I actually tallied up the sightings, and with what I have dug up locally, I know McLean County has 236 sightings.
Mhm. Yeah.
So,
it's a little hot spot for sure.
So, what can you describe what you saw that day, Jim, to the best of your ability?
that was just a tall, upright, reddish-colored figure, but I have seen others since then at much closer range.
Interesting.
So, in fact, the book Tribal Bigfoot actually has probably would have been my 3rd or 4th sighting, but that one was actually at a very close range, probably less than 75 foot away. And that one, it was Mushroom Gully, but I basically drove up on one on the side of the road. And it was actually, it would have been about this time of year, and it was eating buds off a willow tree that was down there. It stuck a branch in its mouth and ran it through and stripped the buds off of it. And when I drove by, it turned and looked at me and go on.
It doesn't sound like they're very shy or skittish in that part of the country. They're a little more, it seems like they're a little more bold. Have you found that to be true?
Well, it depends on who it is. I grew up down in that area, and it seems like with people that they've seen down in an area repeatedly, they kind of get a little bolder.
Okay.
And I know down in that area, they've actually come to recognize the sound of my truck. And it almost seems to draw them in. But, other people probably wouldn't get the same results simply because they're not familiar to these creatures.
What do you think they are, Jim?
Say what?
I know I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I'm just curious about what do you think they are?
They are, to be honest, I think they are some kind of hominid.
Okay.
I'm not saying human, I'm saying a hominid.
Have you ever noticed any variances, any differences in the appearance between one and the other? Like a difference in the shapes of their head or facial features or anything like that? Or do they all appear to be similar?
They all appear to be pretty similar. Now, there is a lot of variation in hair color from what I've seen, but that would be expected. But yeah, as far as facial structure, they all appear to be the same. And, I've seen multiple ones in different areas, and it all appears to be the same creature, the same species. So,
how would you describe their facial features?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. No forehead, or very little forehead. Slight brow ridge. Overall, rather human-looking. The eyes are a little bit further apart than ours are. Wide nose, hooded nostrils like ours. Large, wide mouth, large cheekbones. The eyes, the irises are very pale.
You know what's interesting, Jim, is that I've known quite a few people from Oklahoma that have researched in central Oklahoma, and they all describe almost exactly the same thing. Almost a Native American appearance. They look more human than other examples like in other states. They tend to they have a more human face, not quite so apish as in other instances. Would you agree with that?
I would say they look very human. I have never seen one that looked like a gorilla in the face. And most of the other people I know that have researched and most of the witnesses that have had eyewitness sightings they'll actually pretty much agree with me when one of the things I like to do is I'll sit down with a witness and sketch out what they've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I have done this with witnesses from Michigan, Pennsylvania. I think I did one from California too, and they all pretty much, after I got done drawing what they said they saw, it was all pretty much the same thing that I had seen. Just some minor variation in hair length, hair color,
Yes.
Thickness, things like that.
Well, what do you do when you? I wanted to let Braz and Billy, I wanted you to know that I do not have my Skype has fallen out, so I'm not able to look at questions. Until the same recedes, my satellite is just like stopped. So,
not a problem.
If you could just let me know if there's any questions in the chat. Okay, back to you, Jim. When you go out and begin your research, how do you go about doing that? Do you have a certain technique? Do you basically drive up to an area, get out, do some calls, or you camp out and then hike into the woods and look for signs? What do you do?
Well, usually when I pick an area that I want to research at, of course I'll start doing background investigation before I go in, but the first step's always to get out and scout and look for sign, and if I like what I'm seeing, then I will come back out at night. I've had the most luck using what I call the, I guess you call it a camp technique. What I'll do is I'll go out with 2 or 3 other people, and we'll go out there in the woods, and we'll sit in a circle, and we'll just talk. But the thing is we're all looking behind each other's backs.
That's a good idea.
And usually if they're there, you'll catch them coming up from a distance that they're comfortable with, of course. And if you ignore them, then they'll get closer. And recently, I've done this by myself before too. Just basically sit down and talk to myself on the side of the road or something. Mm-hmm. And to illustrate that it works, I had a thermal imager I borrowed from my friend D.W. Lee. And I was way out in far west Oklahoma, and I had one come up on the side of the road, and we got it on the thermal imager. And it probably got within maybe 100 feet of me. And we went back because on the thermal imager you could see a branch hanging down in front of it. And my initial impression was that it was a juvenile. And we took a comparison shot with a photo because I'd already given the thermal imager back. And the guy in the comparison shot is 6 foot, and we realized very quickly that branch that's just kind of chin level with where this would be on this humanoid figure on this thermal hit is about 3 feet above this guy's head. So we were looking at a 10 to 11 foot animal.
You know, I've done quite a bit of research in Oklahoma, and I've had some really amazing experiences there. Have you ever been to the Chickasha Wildlife Refuge? Do you know what I'm talking about?
You mean the Chickasaw Park?
Yes.
Down in Sulphur?
Yes.
I think she's talking about the one by Lawton, actually.
Oh,
no,
the Wash.
No, I'm not talking about Wichita Wildlife. I'm talking about, and I'm thinking it's called Chickasaw. I always thought it was Chickasha, but it's Chickasaw. It's a wildlife management area, and it is right there on Arbuckle Lake, I think it is, the lake.
Yeah, that's the CNRA. Yeah, I actually go down there several times a year.
Is it still a very active area? I know it used to be incredibly active.
Yes, it is.
Hey.
In fact, there was a gentleman by the name of Charles Hallmark that did a lot of work, and if you ever get a chance to read his book, I would actually recommend it.
Okay.
He passed away, and he was labeled a hoaxer, but come to find out, a rival researcher had actually hoaxed him, and he didn't know it.
Oh, God.
But the stuff in his book is pretty much spot on. I don't think he was quite right about there being as many in that area as he thought there were.
Uh-huh.
But I have cast quite a few tracks down there, and I've had a lot of interesting encounters down in that area. And it still is a good area to this day.
And we do have a question from the chat. Let's see. Due to the different type of faces and dispositions, does the guest think they are different types, or is it, what? I can't understand that question.
Yeah, I couldn't either. That last part is it human experience thing,
or is it human experiences?
Well, I would actually say that a lot of the, how should I put this? Here's a perfectly good question to illustrate a point. Do you guys know how many subspecies of bear are in North America?
No. And you you have earned a degree in natural science, and so I'm pretty sure you could tell us. So go ahead, Jim.
There are 22 subspecies. Now, that's not species, that's subspecies of bear in North America. Now,
wow.
several of those are maybe extinct now, but
that being said, there's almost certainly going to be different subspecies and variations of the same species in North America of these things.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that seem to think so, because there are so many differences. You know, you're looking at Malachi, the Malachi skunk ape out of Florida. If those pictures are correct, that creature looks completely different than anything I've ever seen. And I have actually seen two different kinds. I've seen the one that is tall and looks as a round head. Its body seems to be shaped in human-like proportions. Then I've also seen the kind that has a conical forehead, conical head, sloped shoulders, really long arms, and looks more apish here in East Texas. So I would agree that there are, and I would agree with you, there probably are different subspecies or races. Probably.
The other thing to consider is it might just be variation.
Mm-hmm.
Humans, there's not a lot of variation in humans. There's more variation individually in one group of chimpanzees than there is in the entire human race. Now, that being said, about the coned heads, something to consider is if you piss a chimpanzee off, it'll get a coned head too. There are little muscles called erector pili in the hair on the head in apes, and we actually have them too. That's what causes our goosebumps, the hairs to raise on your arms. That when you make a chimp angry, it'll actually elevate the hair on its head, and it'll look like it has a coned head if you get a chimp scared or angry. That's just something to consider.
That's interesting. That is very interesting. Have you ever had any aggressive encounters?
Well, yes and no. We have a one that we refer to as Stinky out here, and he is an extremely aggressive individual. But as far as abnormally aggressive encounters, yes and no, because yes, I've had them, and no, because I was also the cause of the aggression. Basically, I was down there in the Arbuckle Mountains one time, and me and one of my research partners were down there, and we had got down on the creek. There was a cabin on a bluff overhead, a little trail down there, and we had heard something across the creek, and I was listening to that, and I wasn't thinking, but we were hearing all kinds of noises downstream from us, and had I been thinking, I would have dawned on me that the noise downstream was a distraction, trying to get our attention off what was across the creek from us. And I told Will, my research partner, to light the thing up across the creek with a spotlight, and he did, and it was a baby Bigfoot laying in the reeds. You know, you could see the face looking at you, and they had one arm down in the water, and it was staring at us. And we didn't have the light on the thing for 2 seconds before we heard one single splash, and we heard gravel skid just downstream from us. And there was a fire pit down there, and like I said, there were some cabins on the bluff just above us, and when this thing hit the bank on our side, it actually set off the motion lights on the cabin above us, and there had been a fire down there earlier, so there was some smoke billowing out. But between the smoke billowing out and the light on the cabin, you could kind of see a silhouette of this thing. It was on all fours. It was about 4 feet wide across the shoulders, and you could see it good enough. You could see the hair bristling up on the shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And it punched the ground once. Have you ever heard the impact harmony when a big bull stomps?
Yes.
It was that same feeling, that same thud. Then it did it a second time, and this thing is not moving. About that time, I tell Will we need to get back up to the cabin because this is not going to end well. So we back up this trail, and we're watching it. Neither one of us is armed. We actually have a firearm up in the cabin, but we didn't have it down there with us. And when we got back up on the bluff, we're still looking at it. It hasn't moved. It's staring at us the entire time. Let's see, how should I put this? Will went in to get the gun. I've got my eyes on this thing. As he's inside, 3 more make their appearance. One steps out downstream from it. One of them steps out just on the brush down below the bluff for me and looks. I hear a noise behind me. There's a little side creek, and there's one that we call Hershey. He's kind of the color of chocolate milk.
Mm-hmm.
And he pokes his head up just behind me. And I got the very quick impression this was some kind of show of strength.
Right.
And them basically saying there's more of us than there are you. And Will comes back out, and about that time we hear a loud growl. And we very quickly decided we were done researching for the night. we set a recorder out back when we went back into the cabin. Now, in the recorder, when you listen to the recording, you actually hear the recorder get picked up and then set back down. But, that night we were being watched like inmates in a jail. Every time one of us would go outside, it'd get real quiet, and then you'd hear a growl. At one point, something came up to the back door of the cabin, and we could hear it breathing. Then it left. Then about 3 a.m, something climbed up on the porch. I didn't see it, but Will's wife had got up. She was diabetic, and she was fixing to get a drink of soda, kind of try to balance her blood sugar out, and she looked out there, and she apparently saw something brown bail off the porch, and I had heard it when it did, because it made this noise.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And there have been a few other encounters that weren't too much better than that one, but again,
that's a
most
pretty
of
good.
those. Yeah.
I wanted to tell you something, Jim. I had an encounter once. This is before I even believed in Bigfoot. I didn't believe in Bigfoot until, I don't know, 2001, 2002. But when I was living up in Oklahoma, and this was southwest Oklahoma, I went to a favorite place on my creek. There was a North Fork of the Red River. We had a little place we called Bow Weevil Park. We used to camp out there all the time, and me and my sister would go there, and most of the time we were drinking. So if anything came up, we wouldn't have known. We just went out there drinking and fishing and that kind of thing. Well, I had gone out there one night with a boyfriend, and we were sitting on the back of a car and he's kind of making out stuff, and I heard this thud, very similar to what you're talking about. And he looked at me and said, "What was that?" And I said, "I don't know." So anyway, we're talking, and all of a sudden we hear it again, only it's closer. Then we heard it again, and then it was closer. And all of a sudden, I tell you what, the hair was raising up on my arms and back of my neck. Very uncomfortable. He said, "We need to get out of here." And I said, "We sure do." And we got in the car and hauled out of there. And I've always wondered if that was a Sasquatch, because I can't think of anything else that would stomp the ground like that. And then here you are. You tell this story about this experience about where they were stomping the ground. Do you think that's what they were doing?
It could be. That gorillas will do that too, but in gorilla behavior, that's not bluff behavior. In gorilla behavior, that means I'm about to jump on you and beat the snot out of you.
Well, that's the way we kind of felt too. You know, and this was a country boy, and he was completely unnerved by the experience. We didn't know what it was, couldn't figure it out. We were out there, way out there by ourselves, no weapons, time to go. And
yeah.
Speaking of time,
you said this was Southwest Oklahoma?
This was in Southwest Oklahoma on the North Fork of the Red River.
Okay. All right.
I think it was Jackson County. So.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I know you're not the only one that's seen stuff down there, had stuff happen down there.
No, I'm going to tell you, I've had some very amazing experiences. Have you ever heard of Red Rock Canyon?
Mm-hmm.
We had some experiences there. We were camped down in the canyon, and there was some things running around on top of the canyon, knocking little rocks down, and I guess it could have been people, but it was just real weird. It was a very strange place. Another place go ahead.
I was going to say, an interesting note, you mentioned Red Rock Canyon. When you look on the maps from the 1800s, those are known as the Screaming Woods.
Really?
Yes.
Well, I tell you what, it's a very creepy place at night. Definitely feel like you're being watched all the time when you're down there. Because we were camped in the canyon, we had our tents all out. There was a large group of us that didn't seem like it made any difference. I was glad it was a large group, actually, because it was just uneasy feeling the whole time. And I was experienced by then, but yet I was very uncomfortable in that place. I just kept waiting for us to be barraged by rocks. And I am being told that it's time to go to footers. So, Jim, if you want to take a break, we're going to go to footers, and we'll be back in just a few moments, okay?
Okay.
All right. Go ahead and take us to footers, Grass.
Oh, I didn't get
I
the
probably
memo.
went to the bathroom again.
I didn't. No, I'm here. I just didn't get the memo that I was taking it in the footers, you see.
You always take us into footers.
Yes, dear. Yeah. Hello, this is Walter Cronkite, and this is the way it is. Now, with Lauren Smith and Footers in the Field.
Hello, everyone. It's time for your weekly dose of Footers in the Field. This week's Footers is one of those probably boring to most people science articles, but I found it interesting. So, it's titled, Ancient Human Fossil Could Be a New Primitive Species. And by new, they mean new old, as in they supposedly died out and we're just finding out about it. An ancient human fossil discovered from the sea floor near Taiwan reveals that a primitive group of humans, potentially an unknown species, once lived in Asia. These findings suggest that multiple lineages of extinct humans may have coexisted in Asia before the arrival of modern humans in that region about 40,000 years ago. Although modern humans, Homo sapiens, are the only surviving human lineage, others once walked the globe. Extinct human lineages once found in Asia include Neanderthals, the closest extinct relatives of modern humans. Dennis' genetic legacy may extend from Siberia to the Pacific islands of Oceania. Homo erectus, the most likely ancestors to modern humans, and a hobbit-like Homo floresiensis, I'm sorry, I can't say that word, who lived in Indonesia. These are all hominins, the group of species consisting of humans and all their relatives after the split from the chimpanzee lineage. Now scientists have revealed the first ancient human fossil, a nearly complete right side of a lower jaw with primitive-looking teeth, to be found in Taiwan. The fossil was dredged by a fishing net from the sea floor about 200 to 400 feet below the surface of the Pinghu Channel, located about 15 miles off the western coast of Taiwan. The channel was also part of the Asian mainland during the last ice age, where the sea levels were lower. An unknown fisherman sold the fossil to a local antique shop, and a local collector later submitted the fossil to Taiwan's National Museum of Natural Sciences after the researchers noticed its significance. Analysis of trace elements in the fossil suggests the hominin probably lived between 10,000 and 190,000 years ago. Kind of a leap. The jaw and its teeth look unexpectedly primitive for this age. During the Pliocene epoch, which lasted about 2.6 million years ago to 11,700 years ago, humans generally evolved smaller jaws and teeth, but the new fossil from Taiwan appears larger and more robust than the older Homo erectus fossils from Java and northern China. Oh my. The researchers said this fossil does resemble a 400,000-year-old fossil from Hexian in southern China, located about 590 miles north of this spot. The scientists suggest that these fossils together represent a distinct group of archaic humans, although they caution that they do not yet have enough evidence to say whether it is a new species or not. We need other skeletal parts to evaluate the degree of its uniqueness. The question of species can be effectively discussed after those steps. The new findings suggest that there were several groups of archaic humans living in Asia at the same time, some more primitive than others. Then modern humans dispersed into this region about 50,000 to 40,000 years ago and came across a diverse group of hominins. This is a very different, complex, and exciting story compared to what we were all taught in school. The scientists detailed their findings online in the journal Nature Communications. So to summarize, a fossil, a jawbone, was found. It's ancient human fossil. It's more primitive than ours, and it's also larger than ours, but clearly, close to ours. So that's your footers for the week discussed.
That is interesting.
Billy.
That is very interesting. Well, thank you for that footers, Warren. That was a good one. A really good one.
They didn't say anything. I don't remember. They didn't say anything about DNA in that, did they? Lauren?
Do what? I'm sorry. What?
I don't remember you saying it, but did they say anything about running DNA on it already?
I think they said. Good question. I've only read it, like 3 times. I had to practice the big words. All it said is we need other skeletal parts to evaluate the degree of its uniqueness. And the question of species can be effectively discussed after those steps. It doesn't say what those steps are, which I would assume DNA would be something they would, if they haven't already.
I swear that out of Africa model is falling by the wayside.
A little bit.
Yeehaw. They are getting so damn confused. They're finding more bones of different kinds of hominids out there around the world. A lot of them in Asia, and they don't make any sense on the out of Africa model. Of course, they keep saying, when the modern humans, modern human this, modern human that.
Yeah, I was reading the comments to this, and the out of Africa model was mentioned a lot, and how it's just it was kind of a go-to, but now it's just, like you said, falling apart.
They're confused. Like when even with the footers, when we look at a Bigfoot, how the hell does that fit into the out of Africa model? That just blows it all away. There's no tree. There is no tree. everything pretty much came up along, I would say, almost on its own in certain things with the same potential. So anyway, that's my opinion about it.
Pretty interesting. I'll put the link into chat so that you can go read it if you want to, or just read the comments as well, because there's even more information, I feel like, in the comments, healthy debates and people adding to it and discussing it. So feel free. And now we will get back to our guest. Grass.
Lori?
Grass, do you want to take a phone call?
Yeah,
We do have a phone call.
Let's see. Where are the phone calls? Well, we got to start off with Henry.
Okay.
Hold on. Get this thing scrolled down a little bit here. Henry.
Yeah, you got to start out with me, huh?
Henry.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Hey, Jim, how's it going?
It's going all right.
Good to hear. I'm going to try and hopefully make it back to Oklahoma this year for the symposium.
Well, hopefully we'll see you. We had some technical issues last year, and the shutterbug stuff, the photos didn't turn out that great on the projector.
Oh, gosh. Well, you were talking about the creatures in western Oklahoma, but you got to tell the audience about the one that you told me about, Gigantor. I'm sure everybody would love to hear about Gigantor.
Yeah, the big man. Basically, Gigantor is one that gets seen in the Arbuckles from time to time, and I've taken 2 separate sighting reports from him. And I may have got a brief glimpse of him myself. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But basically, we're looking at an animal that leaves a 27-inch track.
Is that the one that we see you in the picture with? Because that
no.
humongous track. No?
That's a 22-inch track. Gigantor is considerably larger.
Yeah. I don't think...
Well, Arbuckles are the oldest mountains in the United States. So.
Yeah, the world, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll continue.
Oh, sorry. Well, when I was at the symposium a couple of years ago, I know you showed me a few of those huge tracks, and I mistakenly thought those were Gigantor, and you were like, no. Those were not Gigantor. And I was like, what? Jim's got, I know you got some pretty big calves.
Mm-hmm. Well, the interesting thing is, I was recently down in Texas, and I can't talk too much about it because I promised the group I went down with. And apparently there's another Gigantor-sized animal down there.
Oh.
So.
Boy, would I love to know what that is.
Well, they're going to be presenting at... They're actually going to be presenting at the symposium in October, so.
Okay.
But,
yeah. I mean, it's amazing that you can have these huge creatures. I mean, you would expect them to be in other areas, but in Oklahoma...
How big is this Gigantor supposed to be?
Based on the eyewitnesses, between 13 to 14 feet. Yeah.
No, I'm good. No. Never going out in the woods down that way ever again.
Well,
Mark Hall and Lauren Coleman wrote a book called True Giants a few years ago. Which I guess is still alive. I'll tell you what, Gigantor would qualify for that book, definitely.
I think Henry's phone is breaking up. Is it breaking up on anybody else, or is it just me?
Yeah, it was breaking up.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Well, let me try again. What I was saying was that Lauren Coleman and Mark Hall wrote a book called True Giants a few years ago. I'm surprised they didn't include Gigantor in there.
Well, he's not exactly very common knowledge to most researchers, and most people would have a hard time believing that there would be one that large out there. But I know I wouldn't have believed it if I didn't find the prints.
Is there any physical evidence as far as like somebody taking casts of these prints?
Yes, actually, I have a cast, but it didn't turn out that great. About 10 years prior to me, there's a fellow that I believe his name's Chad Scott. He used to do research down in the Arbuckles. He also got a Gigantor track. Now, his was actually about an inch shorter than the one I cast, which has led me to believe that this creature may be acromegalic. Okay, gigantism.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
It's what Andre the Giant. It's what Andre the Giant had.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, I'm also interested in the creature that was seen near the casino, the one that they got the video of, supposedly, the video that was supposedly destroyed or confiscated or something like that.
I need to actually get back up there and play with my contacts in the tribe, so to speak. That area isn't as active as it used to be. They pretty much put a big wind farm up all around the woods there. But when I was up there in was it 2009, 2010? I actually cast some tracks up there in that area too. A guard had some rocks thrown at him, and when I got to talking to him, I talked to the head of tribal security, and they told me that it wasn't just the creature being seen on the video camera. They had also had several witnesses. So there was a woman that came in from the parking lot screaming she saw a monster. There was a guy on patrol, one of the guards, who actually saw the creature leaving the grease traps. Somebody else came in pissed off because they said a guy in a gorilla chute was shaking their camper. This is at the same time, so.
Wow.
Huh.
I hadn't heard those points.
Yeah, that's right. By the way, I wanted to tell Lauren, great footers tonight. There's a website you can go to called ancient-origins.net if you need more articles like that one that you read. That'd be a good one, a good site to go to. I'll PM it to you on Facebook or something, Lauren.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you.
They have all kinds of stuff about like evolutionary history, the human origins, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know Live Science.
that's
their website.
a good one too.
Yeah, they always have that kind of stuff, and I just find it so fascinating, and I love comparing it to Bigfoot, even though a lot of researchers do not think that they are Neanderthals gone wrong and stuff. You know, I'm not trying to say they are. It's just,
right.
You know, they find new stuff every day, new evidence in the scientific community, and that gives me hope for us, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about tonight and call in about. So, thanks for... Oh, by the way, have y'all been watching the Survivor Man Bigfoot?
No.
Oh.
No.
I think that's across the board.
Yeah. We're bad, Henry. We're bad. Without you, we would know nothing.
Oh, by the way, 4 weeks to go to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good deal.
Right. Yeah,
well, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Sure. Jim, hopefully I'll see you in October.
All right.
All right. Talk to y'all later. I'll talk to y'all later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
No, I'd never heard about that giganto kind of situation. That must be one of them local, well-kept secrets, huh?
I guess.
Well, like I said, not too many people know about it, and since I've got into doing this, I've come to realize that a lot of the stuff that a lot of the Bigfooters tend to take as gospel is really not based on much.
Mhm.
Things like you have to go way, way out in the wilderness. You'll never find one near a town. That's completely wrong. The southern Squatch is only 7 foot tall. Again, they're taking it because people somewhere else said that who have never been to an area. So there's probably been reports of Gigantor turned in, but
and thrown right out.
Right. I've actually got a research area that's right on the edge of Oklahoma City, and I can guarantee you any report that gets turned in there gets thrown out by most groups. And it is an extremely active research area.
Yeah, I was just looking. There's a bunch of sightings right around Norman.
Mm-hmm. That there is.
That was one of my questions.
People seem to think it's just eastern Oklahoma, but it's not. I've had sightings, like Mom was saying, in Jackson County, where I'm from, and and it's really flat and just little bitty bushes there, and people are just like, yeah, right, where? Well, there are a lot of creeks and caves and all kinds of stuff.
Well, here's the thing that most people don't take into consideration. The further west you go into Oklahoma, the more isolated it is.
Yep.
A lot of people think, like in the eastern part of the state, you have the Kiamichi Mountains, like in Pushmataha County. They'll say, well, that's remote. Mm-hmm. Pushmataha County has like 24,000 people. You can go out to Ellis County in far west Oklahoma, which is the same size, and you got a county population of around 1,000 people.
Yep, and lots of livestock and little ponds and lakes and rivers and water sources. I mean, it's kind of like Bigfoot's great, it's like free food that way. So, I mean.
Well, let me just point this out. Have you guys heard about the elephant that got loose out there about 5 years ago? It got loose over in by Enid. I think it was Enid. Anyway, the elephant wandered around for almost 3 weeks before it was seen again.
Oh my gosh!
How do you miss that?
Well, the only reason it got seen again is Kia found it the hard way.
Oh.
And of course, that led to some 911 calls that I would really like to hear.
Yeah, I'd like to be a fly on the wall for that.
I got hit by an elephant.
Well, yep, and there are quite a few sightings in that area of Oklahoma, just all over Oklahoma, really. But Oklahoma's not Ohio or Florida or Washington or Arkansas. It's not the hot spot, so we have quite a few sightings, but we just don't get as much press as everybody else. I'd hear
right.
There are more researchers out there, doing what it takes to research this great state.
I think total numbers sighting-wise, Oklahoma can stand toe-to-toe with any other state.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. It's a very active state. I've been researching there. Well, I haven't in a while, but I used to research there quite often. And I never, of all the places that I had the most activity, and I was talking about everyone talking about this to everyone before the show, I've stayed in the Kiamichi 2 or 3 times and really didn't have much. We went out, we did calls, we did, tried our usual thing and didn't get much. But in central Oklahoma and up into the north central part of Oklahoma, it was very, very active. And we got a lot of things. In fact, my third sighting was in Sulphur at the Chickasha Wildlife Management. So it definitely is a very active area, and you wouldn't think it would be. You would not think it would be. It just doesn't look squatchy, but it is very squatchy.
Yeah.
Very surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the Google Earth on the sighting map here, and most of the sightings in western Oklahoma are going along the tributaries.
Yeah, people forget we have the Red River, we have all the, like you said, the tributaries, and I mean we have quite a bit of water flowing through Oklahoma, and people seem to forget about that. When they hear Oklahoma, I guess they think cowboys, Indians, and desert or something. I don't know.
Well, the western part of the state is the spot I've really been hitting up as of late because it's got, in my mind, it's almost like the last frontier for squatching because everybody's ignored it.
Yeah.
Right.
And when you get, we've got a spot that's we've been researching, and it is probably maybe within 100 miles of the Texas Panhandle.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of evidence that's coming out of it, it has got some of the best evidence we've ever gotten. And we think it's because those groups out there, the troops out there, have never actually been researched before. They don't know how to handle researchers.
Oh, that's awesome. Virgin territory. Love it. Love it. So, what kind of techniques do you use? What kind of equipment do you use out there?
With me, I'm more of a footprint guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I tend to go loaded up with plaster and hydrocal, but we've got some researchers that are audio guys, and they'd have to talk to you about the equipment because that's not really my forte. I recently purchased a night vision camera. We have used thermals before, and I've got a project right now that I've been fiddling with called Shutterbug, which uses very high definition professional photography cameras, and basically we're saturating an area with these cameras and taking, hundreds and hundreds of photos. And the idea is if we've got one peeking out from behind a tree at you and it can see you, you're going to see it.
Right.
And it's actually having some degree of success.
I love that.
So.
What kind of
I'm not sure what you mean by
here?
Shutterbug. How do you use that Shutterbug? I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Basically, you're the bait. You're trying to draw as much attention to yourself as possible. And that's primarily what I do in most of my research areas because, let's be honest, you're not going to sneak up on them in the woods.
Mm-mm.
So by trying to get, their attention on you, you're attacking their curiosity, so to speak. They're going to watch you. You're the most interesting thing out there right now.
No, I mean, as far as your technique, you got a camera in your hand. What do you do? Just take overlapping shots in 180 degrees, or what? What do you mean by Shutterbug?
Pretty much, we just repeatedly take shots, we try to cover the entire area when we're out.
Okay, so you just hold your finger on the button? Is that what you're trying to say? Or?
No, just take multiple photos over and over and over and over and over and over and over.
Oh, I see.
Of course, it also means you're going to be going through hundreds and hundreds of photos. So we are very scientific about it because we have what's designated as an object, which means there's something of interest in there and may or may not be a squatch. And then we go back and we try to verify. If we get something, then it gets elevated to subject status. Now, for it to get elevated to subject status, again, that doesn't mean squatch, but it means there's very likely something biological there.
Mm-hmm.
That means it happens on one of several criteria. Number one, something actually has to be, it has to either have been caught in motion or the researcher actually has to have had seen it moving, or there's enough trace evidence when you go back to look to see if it's still there. I.e. footprints, hair samples, stuff like that. And if it doesn't follow that criteria, it gets thrown away as probable matrixing. So, and when I say it's had some degree of success out of, out of 3,000 to 5,000 photos, you may get 12 images, which still ain't bad.
No.
But I've been...
No. You do that. You're doing that pretty much just to establish a presence of them in a certain area?
Well, that, and I'm trying to get good visual documentation of them.
Right.
The project I'm actually working on, I have shared with some of my colleagues in the academic community, and they are actually really excited about it, with the stuff we've gotten so far.
Okay, it is now a little after, it's about 1/4 after the hour. I think it's about time to take us an intermission and bring everybody back in about, let me see here, 6 minutes and 3 seconds. Okay, Jim, we'll be right back.
You are listening to Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio.
I go back home. I think I'll go back home. I think I'll go back home. Back where I belong. I think I'll go back home. Nothing for me, yeah. Nothing for me, yeah. Trying to move it ain't. Nothing
Jim Whitehead.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Caught me right in the middle of a granola bar. Granola bars have a problem with timing. Everybody back here? Jimmy here?
Yeah.
Okay. I got a question. You've done a lot of camping out there. And you've had a lot of nighttime experiences, maybe daytime experiences. Do they ever make a whole lot of noise around you breaking limbs and uprooting trees and things like that? You ever notice twisted branches when you're out hiking? Do they ever leave signs like that?
Oh yeah, but I mean, when they come into the campsites, it's almost like they're in stealth mode. They hardly make any racket. But as far as tree twists and X's and sign, yeah. And in Oklahoma, I know it gets a little hard to differentiate between storm damage and tree twists, especially in certain areas. Mm-hmm. But one of the things I always try to tell the new researchers that I go out with is if you find something that looks interesting, you got to try to debunk it first.
Right. And
when you have a hard time debunking it, then it gets interesting. Perfect example. There was one time I was out, and there was a cedar tree log jammed up in the fork of a dogwood. And I asked the guy I was out with what was wrong with that picture. He said, well, I don't know. Okay, well, look around. He looks around, and where's the rest of the cedar tree? And he walked around for 35 minutes, and he couldn't find another cedar tree. And he came back, he said, I don't know. I said, that's just it. There aren't any around here. That had to have been put there and brought in from somewhere else. So, stuff like that.
Now, what would something like that, what would you tend to think? I mean, you could say that, well, how big of a cedar tree it was, but whether or not a human would be able to handle something like that. Granted, it's brought in from a different area. Would a human be able to do that?
Well, this was in an area we refer to as the marker area due to the high number of tree bows and things like that. But it's on the other end of Mushroom Gully, so it's in an area that we know is active. But that one, if you can't find a logical explanation for it, since there was no other cedar trees and that's not public land, and there's nobody else around in there, kind of rules out hoaxing.
You ever find some of the signs when you're out there that seem to be a communication of some kind?
Well, everybody's got their own opinions on it. I tend to think they mean something, but other times I think it's just them getting bored and playing with stuff in their environment. There's one that I have seen several times over in areas where they have you ever heard the term Tallboy Trail?
No.
Okay. That was something Dr. Hallmark coined. I came to the same conclusion independently prior to reading his book. A Tallboy Trail is the trail the Bigfoot use. They use the game trails. Right. And when you learn to recognize a Tallboy Trail, you will find all the footprints you'd ever want. But in Mushroom Gully, the Tallboy Trail intersects a road. And just downstream from this, there are two logs laying parallel over the stream that the Tallboy Trail is near. and it's been washed out before, and those two logs get set back in that same spot. The only thing I can figure is that means there's a road crossing, because I've seen it in similar areas where you'll have a tallboy trail intersecting a road, and you'll have those two logs. And I've seen that in Grady County, I've seen it in Cleveland County, and I've seen it in McLean County.
Again, it threw me with the tall boy thing. Now I get it.
Yeah,
I think I've heard it before.
Yeah. The Dr. Hallmark called them that in his book, so that's what we've been using in the MABRC to describe them. But yeah, once you learn how to recognize them, you get on there, you'll find footprints.
Okay, we got a couple more callers. I'm going to let Ella. How do you say that name? Asa Lazar? I'm going to let him come on in here for a few minutes. Asa, you there?
All right.
Asa?
All right, carry on.
Armando, are you there?
Oh, yes, I am. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Armando.
Hello?
There we go.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, hey, how you guys doing? I didn't know I had rung in there. So, anyways, it's been a while since I've been on the show and everything.
It has.
But
how are you?
I'm doing great. I was listening, and of course, I was. My biggest question is the tall boy trails. Are there any specific things that we should look for? I mean, I've got, I've found out, I've discovered on my own after doing some research that near the area where I'm at, that the Sam Houston National Park stretches all the way down into the area basically northeast of Conroe, Texas. So, and I've been hearing lots of, activity from a lot of researchers saying that there's a lot of activity out there. So, with that being said, that brings my question, and what are the things I should look for? Anything in particular?
Yeah. The tallboy trails that I've came across, they you'll have the leaf litter matted down like people have been walking over it, but it doesn't quite look like those animals have been going up and down it.
Yes.
Low lane brush, branches and stuff will be stepped on, or not stepped on, but stepped over.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if it were cattle or deer, they'd plow right on through it.
Correct.
And also look up. You'll start seeing branches broken off up to 8, 9, 10 feet above the trail.
Correct.
And a lot of times when you get up to a road, if it can't go under the road via culvert or bridge,
mm-hmm.
they'll build what I call a bus stop there. And a bus stop is basically a blind weaved into the bushes on the side of the road with a big hollow inside of it where they can get in and wait for cars to pass.
That makes sense. They stay undercover. Because, well, this is really amazing. Because, gosh, it's been a while since I went out to a friend of mine who recently passed away. His name's Dale Ryan. I don't know if you know him, Laura. But he had an area down around the Sweeney, Texas area. I went out to his area, and this was an area not too far from town. And, I went out there. It was very interesting. As soon as I got out there, I stopped and listened. I was, I don't know, I guess you could say emotionally I was feeling something, or I felt like I was getting worked up for no reason. But bottom line is that as soon as I stood out there, I heard a loud crack in the distance. And to me, I guess the easiest way I could equate it is that it was like somebody grabbed a baseball bat and nailed the closest, big tree that was around there. The thing that gets me with that is where we were at, it was very secluded. Nobody knew we were back there. It was private property. So to me, that right there says couldn't have been somebody out there messing around. Anyways, going on with the story, I'm sorry. But we we did a good little, round around that whole property that was out there, and there was an area that I looked, and it looked like it was right along the fence line. It looked, it was thick brush back there. There was only 2 horses on the property. That was it. Nothing else. And there was an area through the property that looked like it was about anywhere between 10 to 12 feet high, where the trees that were a lot taller than that, just, it looked like a natural, I guess, if trees and branches and whatnot could provide a natural overhang that would look like a hole being made through all that thick brush and trees out there. It was very strange. I pointed that out to Dale, and of course he had told me that the Sasquatch that was in that area was 9 feet tall. So I thought that was very interesting. And then you mentioning the tall boy trails, it struck a chord with me.
Yeah. That sounds like it could very easily be one. Every time we find a tall boy trail, I tend to wander down them, and as of late, I've been getting better and better casts from doing that. So,
wow, that's amazing. It's amazing. I'd been thinking about it a long time, and like I said, and Lori and Laura, they know my position is that I think they are an archaic human. People say hominid, I say potato. The word homo translates to human. They may not be like us, Homo sapiens sapien, which that is what we are, but they are a Homo sapien. I don't know. I guess I've heard that the term coined Homo sapien hirsuti or gigantus, or however you want to put on the other end. I personally believe that it's too many people want to disregard their intelligence. And hey, when we go out there, I say to people, you're going out to play in their backyard, in their house. Mm-hmm. How can you possibly sneak up on them? How can you possibly sneak into their backyard and expect to stay undetected? That's like 99.9% improbable, since very much like the Native Americans did, over 100, 150 years ago, when they lived out, they still lived out in the frontier, the unsettled frontier, so to speak. They always had a lookout. They always had somebody watching out to warn the tribe whenever, the white man came. Mm-hmm. So I would rather err on the side of caution as far as their intelligence and savvy than to think them an animal. And what I mean by animal is a lower thinking animal, someone who's not able to reason. That's just kind of the way I approach it, which in the end, overall makes it makes a lot more sense. I guess in a way I'm invoking Occam's razor when it comes to, are they a type of human, a race of humans, or not? And I just say that they are. It's just the evidence points that way, in my opinion.
It's a good point, Armando.
Well, thank you, and thank you for allowing me to be on.
Yeah, thank you for calling in. I think we have another caller as well. So, but thank you so much for calling in and
right. Thank you.
Heating up the discussion.
Thank you. And by the way, thanks for all your information. Thank you so much.
Definitely. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye. All right. I think we have another caller, but I'm not sure what area code they're calling under. So I think Graz is going to call out area codes until we hit the right one.
See what happens. 870, you're on the air. You got a question?
Nope.
Okay, back on hold. Hold on. Let's try this one. 714, you're on the air. You got a question? Hello? Okay, we got no, they're just listening in then. That's fine.
Okay. I'm really glad. I really hope that people pay attention so that we don't click on them and they're, we intrude on some private time or, whatever.
Yeah.
Tricky business. I hope that we're a really fascinating show and we don't, bore people to where they need any kind of,
Now, Lauren, you got any questions for him?
I actually do have a question. I was wondering, where all have you researched in Oklahoma and Texas, if you've researched in Texas?
I haven't done too much in Texas. I have, I got to think about that. I've researched quite a bit in Oklahoma.
Okay.
I have, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to, if you can remember where, where all in Oklahoma have you researched, and have you noticed any differences between the habits of the Squatch or even the characteristics, the physical characteristics of them if you had sightings, just kind of, I would just want to know basically how my eastern Squatch differ from my western Squatch,
Well, I have researched the eastern part of the state quite a bit and the western part. It seems like the ones in the western part of the state are bulkier.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I've seen, and ones that I've done sketches and stuff for people down in the Comanches, the Ozarks tend to be lean, muscular, built like track runners.
Mm-hmm.
Track runners or basketball players. Whereas you go out into the other end of the state and they're walking tanks.
Yeah.
They are, 10 foot tall and 4 foot across the shoulders.
Oh.
Just big, solid masses of muscle.
I guess they got to lift all those cows to eat them, so they're bigger.
Well, the game's a little bigger out that way, too. So.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. So have you researched in other states as well, or besides Oklahoma and Texas? Have you researched Arkansas, Missouri, Alabama?
Yeah. Well, I've been researching a little bit in Arkansas as of late. I've basically been going down to the Sulphur River down by Falk.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been getting some interesting stuff down there. So.
How do they differ from the ones up here?
It's the ones down there are the same as the ones in eastern Oklahoma. It's the same appearance, same behavior.
Okay.
They are a little bit more brazen, I will put it that way.
Yeah.
I was down earlier this year. I stopped on the way down with another researcher at Honubby, and I slept in the back of the truck, and she was in the cab of the truck. And I was huddled up under the blankets. It was January in the cab or in the bed of the truck, and only the top of my head was poking out from under the covers. And something basically walked up and grabbed my hair.
Mm-hmm.
And then jerked twice, grunted, and shook the truck, and then walked off. And then we found 9-inch barefoot tracks in the soil the next day, and we could see where they walked back in the woods. Then we went back south. Go ahead.
You weren't able to use that sleeping bag ever again.
Actually, it didn't bother me that bad.
You and Lori Phillips on the line here. Y'all are crazy.
Well, the thing is, I'm going to start using this technique more.
I know. Lori, where was your experience kind of like that? Was that in Oklahoma or was that in Texas?
It was in Texas, and it was my foot.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
What kind of vocalizations do you guys hear there in Oklahoma? What are the most common ones?
Well, the most common ones are what I like to call mimic calls, but that's usually because they're coming in towards areas where they know people are at. And they'll imitate other animals, but you can usually pick up their
what animals do they imitate generally?
Well, we've got recordings of them imitating owls, which owls are territorial by nature. So unless they're raising a brood, you should not hear more than 2 owls in an area. And you've got recordings. When you hear like 6 or 7 owls, there's something very wrong.
That's good to know.
Oh, my goodness. If that's true, then I've been in some very wrong situations a lot.
And
oh, my
we've
goodness.
actually recorded these owl calls. And when you look at the structure of them on a spectrograph, the range of an owl is way different from these vocalizations. These vocalizations tend to be in the 400 to 500 hertz range, if I'm not mistaken, whereas an owl is a much higher pitched sound, which means that it's not an owl making those calls.
Good to know.
What about coyotes? Do they imitate coyotes? Do they howl like wolves? Do they
We have actually heard them. Yeah, we've heard them set the coyotes off, but I think they do that for noise cover.
Right.
And I got a spot that we refer to as Briar Hill in Stevens County. And we were out there one night and we heard something sound off, and of course the coyotes sound off. And then all of a sudden, whatever the first thing was that sounded off, sounds off again. Except this time it sounds pissed off. And then the coyotes shut up. But we've heard whoops, we've heard howls. Some of the creepier things we've heard, we were down in the Arbuckles, and my research partner, Will Johnson, was down there with me. And we heard something. It was the same location where the incident with the baby occurred at that I mentioned earlier. We're listening. All of a sudden, we hear something go, "Pah, pah." Not a human voice. Hear that going up the mountain several times, getting further away. Every so often, you hear something go, "Pah, pah." And like I said, I can't even replicate the tone of this.
Right.
And I was down by the house, and I grew up in those bottoms one time, and this is probably the creepiest thing I have ever heard. This was something that prompted me to go in and get a gun. They were out back. I knew they were out back, and I was basically going outside to listen and see what they were going to do. And about that time, I hear my old childhood nickname get called out from the woods in a non-human voice. There's nobody else in that bottom except for my 80-year-old uncle and aunt. And this is 3 a.m, they're asleep.
Gosh.
So,
what about other kind of language? Have you ever heard any other kind of language, like a Native American language or something unrecognizable?
Nothing that I would say like that, because I think what goes on is if they hear somebody's name called out enough, they may make the connection.
Exactly.
They may mimic words they hear. But I can't say definitively one way or the other if they have a language or not.
I had a similar thing happen to me. I had an acquaintance taught me how to do a call. So I was constantly doing this call. And for years, I would do this call. Never got a response. Never did. And shortly before I moved from that area, I was just standing there one day talking to my neighbor, and all of a sudden I heard the call come from the woods, identical to mine, only deeper. And it was an amazing experience because it took years for them to, I guess, to learn how to do it or to decide they wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. But I knew it was not somebody else out there doing that call. I knew it was one of them. I was absolutely, short of seeing them do it, I was convinced it was one of them mimicking me. Also, I would call my dog every time we'd go out in the woods. I would call my dog when we were coming out of the woods, and she would come running. And I heard her name being called out in the woods. So I do believe and I've heard other people say they've heard their names, they've heard nicknames called, just different things that are common, a dog's name being called, they would mimic that. I
wish we had that recording of Cookie, the Cookie grunt. I wish we had that up. That would be the one where the Cookie went out and you were calling her, and yeah.
Something says Cookie. Yeah, that was pretty tripping to hear that. Hear something very deep say Cookie. That just blew my mind. Like, what in the world?
Give me a
cookie.
No, I got the image of Cookie Monster in my head.
Well, it was a monster, and it was saying Cookie, so that was, yeah. But I just don't feel like they've been around this long because they're dumb, without being discovered. They haven't been around this long without being discovered because they're stupid or they're dumb animals. I don't believe that at all. That's just...
Jim, what do you think about game cameras? I mean, it's been pretty much commonplace with most of the researchers we've had on the show. They say they've had absolutely no luck with game cameras. Have you or any of your team ever tried game cameras, and did you have any success with them?
I've had no success with game cameras. I've pretty much given up on them.
Mm-hmm.
But
most of them have, yeah.
Well, there's a reason.
Why do you think it is that they're so unsuccessful with game cameras?
Well, when you look at pictures taken with a game camera, 9 times out of 10, what's the animal doing? It's looking straight at the game camera.
Right.
And as it turns out, most game cameras actually, the motion sensor also emits low wavelength IR, which most nocturnal animals can see.
Okay. There's been a lot of theories on that.
Yeah. And
well, some people are talking that because there's like a delay. There's a reason for the delay is that the camera has to actually turn on and warm up in order to take the picture. And during that warm up process, it puts out a high frequency sound that we can't hear.
I don't know about it producing a sound, but I do know they produce an IR light. And here's the thing: we've had some evidence, strong evidence, that seems to suggest these things do see low wavelength IR. We blasted one with IR up at Ulaga Lake, and when we did, it reached and it was actually laying in the grass doing the Vietnam soldier crawl across a field trying to get to an ice chest on the other end of the field. And when we blasted it with IR, it reached up and grabbed, of course, we're looking at it through night vision, which is why we hit it with the IR. It reached up and actually grabbed brush and pulled down. Recently, we were in Chickasaw Park, and there was me and another researcher there, and there were several of us, but we were the only ones that were still awake. We had 3 campsites set up. In the middle one, somebody had set an IR spotlight up. The outer 2 camps got visited. They left the middle one alone. Then we actually seen them over at one of the outer camps, and the researcher that was with me, she turned the IR on her night vision. When she did, stood up and spun around and looked at her.
Wow.
So that all, to me, strongly says they can see the IR.
Well, let me ask you this question. Do you think the game or the park rangers are aware of the existence of these creatures in Chickasha?
There's something going on. In 2011, was it 2011 or 2010? 2010. I firmly proved that there are black bears in that park. I was doing some stuff with the Oklahoma Academy of Science, and I brought that up to the biologist in charge of the park. I said, well, you got black bear? And he said, no, we don't. And I said, well, okay, why do you have the anti-bear trash cans there? Because you go there now and they replaced all the old trash cans with the anti-grizzly trash cans they use up in Yellowstone. And keep in mind, this is not just some guy walking up asking the biologist. I'm doing stuff for the Oklahoma Academy of Science, which is basically to tell the people in Chickasaw Park what they've got in the park. And the biologist was in complete denial of the bear, even though I had actually cast several bear footprints and turned them in. So I don't see how they could not be aware there's something there, but I don't think everybody knows about it. I think if somebody sees something, they get read in or something. Of course, this is all conjecture. This is all my opinion. So
we were camped
don't
there.
quote me as being factual here.
We were camped there, and we were all sitting around the campfire talking, and we weren't talking low. It was late, probably 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. So we were talking very low around the campfire. Everyone else had already retired for the evening. We had been out researching, and we'd come back. It may have even been later. And we were talking very low around the campfire. Of course, we were talking about Bigfoot, because that's what we were there for. And we heard a limb snap. And so we turned flashlights on, and guess who was standing there listening to us? A park ranger. And he was eavesdropping. And we asked him, what are you doing there? He goes, well, I've had some complaints, y'all are being loud. Well, we knew we were not being loud. And he says, we all need to keep it down. And he was trying to turn it back around, and I was just astounded that he was in the shadows, and no telling how long he had been there, but he'd been listening. So I've always thought there was something going on with that place. Extremely unusual behavior for a park ranger.
I've heard from people that have researched it for years that they think that at least somebody knows something is going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I can't say one way or another.
Especially that place, Jim. That place is extremely active.
What I can say is we talked to a game ranger down there, the county game warden at one point, or a county game warden. I don't know if he's still down there. And he came up and asked us what we were doing, and we told him. And his exact words were, his exact words were, I cannot tell you they're out here, but I'm not saying they're not. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Mm.
That was his exact wording.
Well, I had a park ranger here in Angelina National Forest. He didn't answer me, but he looked at me, and when no one else was looking, he winked. Said, well, that must mean yes. You know, that's what I took it as to mean. Yeah, they're here.
And to be honest, I think most of them, even if they know something or they don't know anything, they tend to just keep it quiet. We were down in Falcon. We actually had a game warden come up there and to talk to us because he thought we were poaching ducks, I think is what it was. But we told him what we were doing out there, and he started to laugh about it. And I said, "Oh yeah, we cast some tracks, and they're right over there if you want to go look at them." And he got real quiet when he seen the tracks on the table because it's kind of hard to mistake, you know, a 16-inch footprint. He reaches over and turns. He had one of the body cams, and I watched him turn the body cam off and then go over and look at them.
Huh. Wow.
So,
Hmm.
No, I do firmly believe there is something going on in the state parks, but I do not know. And it wouldn't be unheard of because Fish and Game tends to keep their mouths shut about big predators being out in the woods.
Mhm. Like the bears.
Don't have any cats out there.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is I actually know for a fact that they did move bears and big cats in the state in the 80s because I can name people involved in it. So.
Well, Jim, do you have any parting thoughts? We're in the last few minutes of the show. It's been a great show, and you've been very...
Any advice for the newbies?
Yeah.
Just keep a level head when you're out there squatching. Not everything in the woods is a squatch.
Okay.
Try to be logical and analytical about everything.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show. Do you have anything? Oh, do you have something else?
No, it was a pleasure to be on the show.
Well, we really enjoyed having you. We thank you for coming on because we have not had an Oklahoma researcher in a while come on, so we were excited. And I was really glad to hear that a lot of your experiences and descriptions were very similar to others that I've heard coming from the same area. So I know you know what you're talking about. So we thank you so much for coming on, Jim, and hope you enjoyed your experience on Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio.
It was fun.
Okay. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for coming on.
Well, everyone,
right.
Next week we are having Brian Holcomb and Stuart Fleming from Jefferson, Georgia. So we've got some Georgia boys coming on next week. Some more Bigfoot field researchers on Nite Callers Bigfoot Radio. So everyone, we're going to go ahead and call it a night. Raz, you'll roll that intro. Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.